It's important to understand that the press is primarily a click-maximizing machine, not a truth-maximizing machine. If you're not a click-maximizing machine, well, you don't get the clicks, and then you don't get the revenue, and then the company goes under.
Yeah.
So the entire incentive structure is maximize clicks, not maximize truth. And so that's why you'll have sort of incendiary headlines that are like really way over the top, because often the truth is boring and complicated, or it's like a sort of version of the truth that will be more salacious. So that's the situation with the media.
Typically, I never want to make multiple videos on the same subject in such a little span of time, but I have done quite a lot of research that other people have not bothered doing regarding Tomb Raider series writer Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And my stance on her has since not changed. I have had conversation with about 50 different people online about her, and they have provided very little to no proof to support that this witch hunt is reasonable or justifiable. So for those who are looking for answers to questions, rather than take the time to do your own research, simply watch this video, and you can be the judge for yourself. You're not going to get honest answers from Melonie Mac or any of the other activists in her circle. I am here to address questions that they will not answer truthfully. That is why they're called influencers, and it's not always an endearing term. They do not act in principle. They do not want to reason or seek truth. They simply want to influence people that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is this ultimate evil that's set to destroy the world by being part of movies and TV shows for some reason. But this is the problem that these activists have, and how they group all these people in the same category. The woke mind virus is a real thing, but what is equally as real is the anti-woke mind virus, triggering a woke alarm in the person's head every time he or she sees something they don't like. They have to find a way to politicize it. Melonie is not a truthful person. This is a personality who will actively look for depictions of Lara Croft and call them manly for no reason, and call it a coordinated effort to make Lara Croft uglier and more masculine on purpose. In this instance, Weta has made this figure in their own signature style. Here are figures they have made of Yennefer and Ciri from the Witcher TV show, Tiny Tina from Borderlands, and Galadriel from Lord of the Rings. Melonie has not communicated with Weta and asked for their comment. Her motive is simply not to find the truth, but to perpetuate problems and harm people's reputations. Many of her videos are dishonest and disingenuous, and she has managed to manipulate hundreds of thousands of online followers with her blatant propaganda. While the left has extremists like Keith Olbermann, Jim Cornette, and Froskurin, the right has Melonie Mac and Heel versus Babyface. You even have YouTubers with almost 300,000 subscribers fabricating fake interviews from thin air in order to smear her. The excerpt from this video is not available anywhere. The hate is so incredible that they're desperate to make shit up. There is such a huge demand for Waller-Bridge controversy than there is a supply of. This is so bizarre, and it's scary. Trust in the media is at an all-time low. So it makes no sense whatsoever why you would want to take a page out of the mainstream media's playbook, why you would want to practice tribalism and activism and not want to instead act with integrity and good faith. So what is the big deal about this woman? Your guess is as good as mine, but I thankfully have answers to other frequently asked questions. But we're going to start at the top. Number 1. Who is Phoebe Waller-Bridge? Waller-Bridge was educated at St. Augustine's Priory, a Catholic independent school for girls. Waller-Bridge considered herself a tomboy as a child. She liked adventuring and doing things like climbing trees. She had a friend named Maria, and together, they wore boys' t-shirts and shorts for comfort and at one point shaved their heads. Her parents were okay with this and were willing to accept her for who she was. At one point, she was considering identifying herself as a boy. The standards and practices at her school, followed by an awkward encounter with another boy, made her reconsider this idea. She later attended the independent sixth form college DLD College London in the Marylebone area of London. She graduated from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. The activists want to downplay her early life by calling her privileged, but everything here sounds pretty much in line with what her interests are as an adult. Her Catholic background was obviously a strong inspiration for coming up with Fleabag. And while the thought of wanting to transition to being a boy might raise some flags, having boyish tendencies as a girl is normal at a young age. It would certainly explain her interest in Tomb Raider, and there likely were similar TV shows and video games that she was into at the time. Waller-Bridge first got attention by putting on her one-woman show known as Fleabag at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2013. Then BBC gave her an opportunity by giving her her own sitcom in 2016. So she was the executive producer, head writer, and main star of this show, and it eventually found its way to the States via Amazon Prime Video. Of course, that show could have ended after just one season. But instead, that was the launching point of her career. Similar to Will Smith and how he produced his own sitcom and it became a big hit. So her fortes are comedy and action. She claims to have been a fan of series like Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider when she was younger, and she prefers writing about women over men. She got to produce her second show on BBC, Killing Eve, a spy thriller involving two women in a relationship. This stint apparently got the attention of Daniel Craig. He apparently lobbied to have Waller-Bridge on board as a writer. Waller-Bridge became only the second woman to be a scriptwriter for a Bond movie. Her primary job was to work on the female characters as well as add humor to the script here and there. Personally, I don't agree with this. It's like WWE hiring black writers to write material for their black wrestlers. Biggie once made a big deal about this in an interview in October 2021, then the following Monday, he cuts a promo about nectar dripping down his chest between his nipples. What matters to me the most is that the writing is good, not about what race or what genitalia the writers have. But on the flip side, though, it's important to realize that Waller-Bridge likely had no input when it came to Bond or other male characters in the movie. Waller-Bridge also had two major acting roles, firstly as a feminine robot named L3-37 in Solo, a Star Wars story. Waller-Bridge was only an actress during this movie, and from what I have seen and researched, her role has been pretty harmless in terms of politics are concerned. And then, there's Indiana Jones. So, Kathleen Kennedy offered her a role in the movie when out to dinner with her in London. James Mangold and the Butterworth brothers developed the Helena Shaw character inspired by Barbara Stanwyck's character from the 1941 comedy The Lady Eve. But again, there's no indication that Fleabag had any creative input on the script. There's one thing I can at least give Kathleen Kennedy mercy for. She did not decide to repeat Amy Pascal's mistake.
The real problem I have with it is the title. Calling it Ghostbusters, but without having any connection to the original story or characters, is a shameless attempt to bank on the name to get fans to see it based on the title alone. At the same time, it takes advantage of the younger generations who might not have even seen the original. They'll see it without feeling like there's any prerequisite of having to see the other movies. And I know the term remake has gone out of fashion, but I feel like it is a remake because now everybody says reboot. But I don't care. To me, by definition, a remake is when you make a movie called Ghostbusters, then you make another movie called Ghostbusters, you made another Ghostbusters, you remade it. It's a remake. Of course, that doesn't mean it's a remake of the same story. It's different, but by using the name, it's pretending to be original in its own right and sweeping the first one under the rug as if it didn't happen, as if, it's not based on anything pre-existing. But I don't understand. If this new film wants to be a reboot, then why couldn't it take note from all the successful reboots that came before? Like Star Trek, you have a younger cast, but you also have it rooted in the lore of the original series. You have Leonard Nimoy playing an old Spock, passing the torch to a younger Spock, and then really try to win us over with the new cast.
Even though Harrison Ford is too old for another movie like this, they at least tried to do right by creating a proper passing of the torch moment, rather than outright replace him and pretend he never existed. Yes, this sounded like a lousy end to the Indiana Jones adventure. Yes, the Helena Shaw character sounds like the same formula Disney has had with Captain Marvel, Wendy and other female leads. I agree with the notion that Fleabag should not have co-starred in this movie. But not mentioning the box office. It could have been a lot worse, and Fleabag has very little to do with it. The capitalism is stealing line in the trailers certainly didn't help matters, either. So to summarize this answer, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is not an executive. She is an employee in Hollywood that gets offered opportunities and accepts them. Number 2. Why am I so aggressive in defending Phoebe Waller-Bridge? Because I know exactly without a shadow of a doubt that these pundits have no idea what they're talking about. I don't get what it is about Tomb Raider that makes these people lose their minds, but for the most part, most of these influencers don't even make their own conclusions regarding recent Tomb Raider news, or even have their own opinions or thoughts. They inherit Melanie's thoughts. And coming from my personal experiences with Melonie, she is a liar and hypocrite, and she will silence you if she can't control you. So in a nutshell, all these people want to regurgitate this woman's lies. Getting in her good graces is apparently more important than being a reputable source for news. Critical Drinker will get on the Mactivism bandwagon and clamor for classic Lara Croft to return, all while complaining about how there are too many female protagonists in movies with nearly the same characteristic as classic Lara Croft. How they do everything, have wooden personalities, and have no flaws. And not to my surprise, Lara Croft was left out of his list of female movie characters that he considers strong and well-developed. Most of these people will vilify Waller-Bridge for no other reason aside from being a part of these Hollywood movies. They know absolutely nothing else about her, but reasoning be damned. Meanwhile, J.K. Rowling will make various political changes throughout her Harry Potter books. Notable different changes include removing Hermione of her whiteness, making Dumbledore and Grindelwald gay lovers, comparing Voldemort to Trump, classifying the Slytherin house as full of racists, and making Uncle Vernon a pro-Brexit supporter as a means to make him more unlikable. And would you look at this, these hypocrites wasted no time in bowing at JK's feet and enabling her political rhetorics. So they only bought and played the game in order to stick it to journalists? Because of one view out of the many other far-left views that Rowling has that otherwise might change the way you see Harry Potter and his story, these propagandists decided to forgive her, basically. They're vilifying Waller-Bridge over things that Rowling had actually done to her stories. It's not that nobody should ever play Hogwarts and it deserves to be boycotted, but this herd of influencers don't practice what they preach. There is something seriously wrong with this picture. I will criticize her when there is actually something to criticize her for. Number 3. Why is Phoebe Waller-Bridge suddenly such a big name in Hollywood? The common consensus that influencers will make is that Hollywood executives are far-left extremists and they only want like-minded people with the same state of mind. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that this is not true. When you look up her shows that she has produced, especially Fleabag, you'll notice that she has won 3 Primetime Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, and dozens of other different awards. Writers, producers, actors and other people in the entertainment industry can spend their entire career in Hollywood, make tens of millions of dollars, retire with an oceanfront property in California or Florida, and not win a single award. She has won 33 among her first 2 shows she has produced alone. Out of those, she has been nominated 37 times. So she has won 89% of the awards her shows were nominated for. Take that for what you will. I'm not saying she knows how to act and write and produce, so we must never question anything she ever does. But I will say that those awards mean something to higher-ups at Disney and all these other corporations. Seeing awards on a resume has to mean you're good at what you do. Question 4. How much power does Phoebe Waller-Bridge have on these Hollywood projects? People are quick to judge her because she practically co-starred in the recent Indiana Jones movie, and because her character got the best outcome in the end of the movie, that she intervened with the script and took over the whole project basically. Unless you have video evidence of behind-the-scenes footage, that is not what happened. Did you know that Bridge was going to be in the Mr. and Mrs. Smith remake? She recently left the project over creative differences. Now, you can voice your complaints like Bridge tried to, but ultimately, it's up to the higher-ups to decide whether or not they'll listen to you and make changes based on your voice. Needless to say, her awards did not give her any stroke when talking with Donald Glover and the other executive producers. Doesn't this sound familiar? As for her role as a writer, such as for the movie James Bond, No Time to Die, she has had minor input on the story. She did not get to write whatever she wanted, nor did she have a ton of persuasion over the director and producers. The higher-ups decided on what the story is about. The writers are just tasked to complete the story scene by scene. There could be ideas that writers can come up with, but the producers ultimately have the power to shoot them down and issue rewrites when needed. From what has been gathered about this movie, there were some ideas that the team liked, and there were others that they didn't. This is why I find covering this writer's strike to be ludicrous. The writers are not ultimately responsible for quote wokeness. The writers are just scapegoats. Nothing is going to change regarding the political correctness until the leaders see the need for change. They see most writers as expendable, and will simply appoint new writers when results aren't favorable enough for them. Question 5. Do I believe Phoebe Waller-Bridge is out to destroy all these series? No. As much as the MelonieMactivists don't want to hear that, it's the most reasonable stance to take with her at the moment. None of these executives are trying to destroy brands or destroy childhoods. And at the same time, these executives are not guardian angels. They're just terrible at doing their jobs, that being entertaining their audiences. Sometimes, they have the wrong ideas, sometimes, they make mistakes. But I can't necessarily judge Fleabag on things she has not yet done. Since we're in the business of innocent until proven guilty, this can't only apply to people within our political bubbles or interests. We can't just pretend like she said something horrible or wrote something horrible if she hasn't done that. Some people see money in this new political fad, but many don't. I have no doubt that she is a very big liberal, but there are still many common sense folk that prefer to keep things in the industry the way they have been. And as I have shown in an earlier video, Phoebe has expressed she would rather put entertainment first. Aside from that, she has went on to say that James Bond should continue being a man. And Indiana Jones should retire along with Harrison Ford. What more does she have to do? Leave a project? Well, she fucking did that. So there is practically nothing that makes Waller-Bridge different from Henry Cavill. They both are actors from England, they both work on big IP projects, they both aren't shy to address concerns to higher-ups and leave at their own wills. But one is a renowned hero, and the other is the scum of the earth. It's hilarious, political theater. Question 6. Do I agree with everything Phoebe Waller-Bridge says? Absolutely not. She is not immune to saying something stupid or being wrong, just like any actor or a figure in Hollywood that doesn't have a grasp of the typical consumer. She had admitted that she did not watch Bond movies prior to working on the Bond script. That's sort of surprising considering her involvement with Killing Eve. Honestly, I would at least have expected the based media come at her over that. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, that she does not believe that Lara Croft was intended to be a sex symbol at the start, even though they relied on her sex appeal to draw in consumers. She does have a point, however, that smaller breasts can provide a woman a physical advantage. American Ninja Warrior has been on TV for over 14 years now. Rarely do you ever see female gymnasts, mountain climbers, and parkour runners on this show with large racks. She calls herself a feminist, and clearly under the hood there are likely a lot of things about her that I may disagree with. She might have the belief that women's soccer players deserve equal pay compared to men's soccer players, or that transgender athletes should be competing with women. And if she had these beliefs for certain, it wouldn't surprise me. Question 7. Do I believe Phoebe Waller-Bridge is a Tomb Raider fan? She says she is. She will have stories about how she played the early games on the PlayStation. But of course, that always doesn't mean she's telling the truth. However, the proof is indeed there. Now, if you have been paying attention to what Fleabag has been working on, Ana de Armas has had a minor role in James Bond, No Time to Die. De Armas claims her character was entirely written by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Her character in that movie is an agent named Paloma. She helps Bond on one mission, and she appears and disappears in the movie, only lasting about 10 minutes. I had only ever noticed this Paloma character only because somebody had shown me an Honest Movie Trailers video of this movie. But, I have to think this was absolutely no coincidence. This is Lara Croft copied and pasted in a Bond movie. Fleabag managed to fit a Tomb Raider preview in the script, and it's pretty interesting to say the least. The dress is heavily inspired by the one Lara wore from Tomb Raider legend. Her dress is dark blue. The holsters are the same. The gun she holds is silver and black. Her lipstick is brown. The only thing that wasn't changed was the hair, obviously because Anna's is too short to style in a ponytail. That, or it would have easily crossed the grounds of copyright infringement. But needless to say, it's obvious that Fleabag at least is aware of Tomb Raider and Lara Croft. Question 8. Who do I think will be offered the starring role? If you were to ask me with a gun to my head, I would say Ana de Armas. It might not be, and of course, Fleabag does not have any stroke when it comes to casting. But I have to think that's who she would want after working with her on the Bond movie, so she would at least be a consideration from Amazon. De Armas might not be white or British, but she looks the part, and has experience with action and adventure films. Probably an unrelated note, but she has grown her hair since the Bond movie. She has not cut it again, so it wouldn't be a hard ask for her to style her hair in a long, braided ponytail. Question 9. Who is also working on the Tomb Raider live-action show? Dimitri Johnson will be the show's executive producer. You will see this name mentioned very rarely among the videos of these influencers. That's because he has a good track record, not just in working on movies, but also highly acclaimed video games. He was a co-producer of both Sonic movies. He also produced the 2022 movie We Need to Talk, which is about a self-absorbed online video game influencer who's disconnected from everyday life. Maybe they can have Melanie star in the sequel. But if he had any political influence in the movies that he has worked on, we were sure to have found out by now. He's also producing an upcoming We Happy Few TV show and is also producing the Tomb Raider animated series starring Haley Atwell. Additional producers on the Tomb Raider live-action series include Ryan Ondolina and Amanda Greenblatt. The two of them used to be Amazon TV executives up until late last year. Since then, they formed their own production company and negotiated a deal with Amazon. Both of them have been around the movie industry, but neither of them yet to have a producer role. But if they were not happy with Amazon for some reason and wanted to form their own company, it's likely because they wanted to be their own bosses or live by their own rules that are distant from Amazon's. There is no indication that this show will be managed like The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, yet people will constantly assume that's what it will end up being like. All because of this writer that they don't like or a company that they don't like. They also work on The Boys and Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. So it all comes down to what the showrunners and producers want to do, not Phoebe Waller-Bridge. The success of the show, or lack thereof, depends on them. And finally, do I think the Tomb Raider TV show will be any good? To be frank, the trailers are going to have to really win me over to get me interested. But in my personal opinion, I do not think the show will be any good. It has nothing to do with politics, but rather, do I see them come up with good material long enough for however many seasons the show would end up being? I think it will have the same format as the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or the Wild Thornberrys, where in each episode, the cast is in a different location. That would be great to make the audience tune in, but it would be hard to keep them tuned in without fresh ideas and something interesting for Laura to be in search of. What's at stake, if you will, or a goal? Now, there is still that chance that the show could have political influence. Phoebe Waller-Bridge can very well try to settle Amazon's hash and oppose the political pandering to no effect. They could stamp down their authority and override any opposition within their team. It's also possible that they can allow her to have free reign over the story and scripts, and she'll want to lecture the audience all along. This is just one thing that we would never know for sure if this were to happen, but one thing for sure is that these propagandists will waste no time to upload videos blaming her. And that's it. With the writer's strike going on at the moment, we probably won't hear about any more updates about this show anytime soon, aside from possible announcements on casting. But what I have shown in this video is much more than what you'll ever learn from watching Melanie Mac or Nerdrotics and other bad faith actors. We need more people who are willing to be transparent and honest and find truth when they seek it, rather than lie to the audience and become another wannabe mainstream media outlet. Call me a white knight. I don't really care. I don't want some influencers play news anchor and tell me what to think. I don't wish to buy into outrage culture and end up being wrong half the time. I want to be open-minded and have freedom of thought. I'm not endorsing Phoebe Waller-Bridge. All I've done is disprove arguments that were designed to smear her. And as I have stated before, if they are lying about her, then who else might they be lying about?
It's time to stop, okay? No more. Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your